This audit committee meeting, and we'll start with Joyce. Maybe you'll do a roll call, please.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Dave Talley,
Here.
Tammy McDonald, Alyssa Dobbin, Michael Dixon, Mark Bymaster, Kathleen Weigel,
Here.
Leandre Camel. We have quorum.
Great. And as always, we'll go ahead and do introductions, and we'll start down at the end with Patricia.
Anna Patricia Morales from the Office of General.
Heather Frederick, Chief Financial Officer.
Annette Minogue, Accounting Director.
Alyssa Dobbin, Audit Committee.
Bob Bliss, Office of Inspector General.
Andres, we'll go back to you. And then you.
Andres Ortiz, Inspector General's Office.
Danielle Thomas, Inspector General's Office.
Susie Kay, IG's office.
Okay, Randy.
Randy Law, IG's office.
Dave Talley, Audit Committee.
Teresa Michael, Inspector General.
Carrie High, Counsel for Inspector General.
Joyce Edison, Executive Assistant for Inspector General.
Christina Daniels, Office of Inspector General.
Leandre Camel, Audit Committee.
Mark Bymaster, Audit Committee.
Brett Friedman, RSM.
Chantel Knowles, RSM.
Okay, and we'll go to the back.
Melinda Sheffield, Chief Academic Officer.
Dave Dolan, Facilities Management.
Stacy Marshall, Director of Maintenance.
Okay, well, welcome to all of you. We'll give you a minute or two to review the agenda, and is there any additions or deletions to the agenda, Terry?
No.
Okay, well, then I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, next, to review the August 18th minutes of our meeting. Take a few minutes and review those, and after such review, I'll accept the motion to approve.
Leandre motions to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passed unanimously. Public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Inspector General report. Terry?
All right. At last month's Audit Committee meeting, pursuant to Board Policy 1.091.4.d, the Audit Committee unanimously recommended that the current Audit Committee Chair be permitted to extend his term for 1 year. On September 6, 2023, the school board unanimously approved this recommendation. Based on the committee's prior recommendation to extend Mr. Talley's term for 1 year and the board's subsequent approval, Mr. Talley is eligible for nomination and to again serve as chair. We will now follow the procedures for electing a chair and vice chair as promulgated under Board Policy 1.03b.12 and used when electing school board chair and vice chair. Chair and vice chair are selected by a majority vote of the Audit Committee. At this time, I would call for nominations for Audit Committee Chair. Presumably based on last month's recommendation, the committee will nominate Mr. Talley. Do I have a motion? Or
Motion to nominate Mr. Talley as chair for the Audit Committee.
second?
I'll second.
Second.
And vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.
I'm thrilled.
All right, now we have for vice chair. Do we have nominations?
Leandre Camel nominates Tammy McDonald as vice chair for the Audit Committee, if she is still interested in serving. Oh, she's not on.
Well, we can hold off And, I'm sure that she probably wants to, but I would hate to put her in that position without giving her the option to say no. I think that would be appropriate. So if that's the committee's will.
I can share with you, I got a text from her this morning saying, of course, that she'd be on Zoom, but she said, also, I desire to continue to serve as your vice chair and
Okay.
appreciate your support. So that's just an FYI in terms of her indication of that.
Okay, well, then I trust Mr. Talley that he's not misrepresenting and volunteering what's going to happen to Ms. McDonald. And if it is true, you can handle that with Ms. McDonald yourself. Okay, so we have a nomination for Tammy McDonald for vice chair. Do I have a second?
I can second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimous. All right, I'll call for closing the nominations for Audit Committee Chair, and we are done at this time. So we have Mr. Talley and we have Tammy McDonald. Thank you very much. I appreciate the support of everybody here, and I appreciate everybody coming forward and nominating people that aren't here. Okay, Ms. McDonald is on now. Okay. Congratulations. We also have handed out our annual report for this year. I want to take a moment and commend my staff. I take the credit for all of their hard work. And if you take the time and look through it, I know it's a little dry reading. We try to throw some pictures in there. And some of the pictures, the staff don't even know that I put in there. So it's kind of a surprise to some of the staff members. They didn't know I was doing that. That's the only way I can get them to read it as well. But the staff have really put forth an amazing amount of work, and I am extremely proud to take credit for all of their work. We have some amazing people here. Investigations alone, I think, has tripled the amount of investigations that get done. Audit continues to not only do the internal funds audits in record time, but they're also doing special and performance and operations audits as they're doing the internal funds, which absolutely amazes me, seeing that I came from the state where it took a year to do a P-card audit, year and a half, of a 15-person P-card. Don't ask. And the contract oversight and procurement section is doing some amazing work and getting some, we're getting some funds back for the district. So, I'm very proud of everybody, and I want to thank you all for all the hard work. I wish I could give everybody raises, but Mr. Burke said no. I asked, he said no, blame him. All right, he drives the red car outside. Okay, with that, I think we're done with the IG update, and we can start with the next section, audit reports.
Okay, well, we'll go to the first audit report, audit of purchase of iReady educational software. Danielle?
Yes, good morning. Again, I am Danielle Thomas, and I am here today to present to you the audit of the purchase of iReady educational software. The objectives of this audit were to determine the extent of compliance with applicable Florida Department of Education rules and school board policies, and to determine whether, 1, the vendor complied with the terms and conditions of the purchase contract, 2, the vendor delivered the agreed-upon services and materials, 3, the invoice billing rates were correct and adequately supported, and 4, the costs incurred were allowable and funded by appropriate sources. A little background. So, what is iReady? iReady is a web-based diagnostic and instruction platform for reading and mathematics, which combines the diagnostic, growth monitoring, standards mastery, and progress monitoring assessments with instructional resources that are personalized to meet the individual needs of each student's academic progress. The iReady platform aligns with the district's comprehensive evidence-based reading plan, which is known as a CERP. In addition, it also aligns with Florida's best standards for English language arts and mathematics, which are the benchmarks for excellent student thinking. On May 11, 2016, the school board approved the purchase contract for the purchase of iReady diagnostic and instructional software site licenses for grades K through 5 for reading and mathematics. Concurrent to this purchase contract, some elementary and middle schools also procured additional site licenses and instructional materials through individual school-initiated requests for quotes without using the purchase contract and without input from the purchasing department. The table that you have before you is a breakdown of the total expenditures for the purchase contract approved by the board, which includes the original contract and subsequent amendments. The original contract was approved for a 3-year period from fiscal year 2017 to 2019 for reading and mathematics site licenses for grades K through 5, for a contract total of approximately $5.6 million. In fiscal year 2019, Amendment 1 was approved for the purchase of the Math Teacher Toolbox for grades K through 5. The toolbox is a supplement to the site licenses, which includes a series of lessons, instruction, and activities for teachers to use inside and outside of the classroom. The contract total for this particular amendment was approximately $250,000. In fiscal year 2020, Amendment 2 was approved to renew and extend the contract for a 1-year period for iReady Reading K through 5 site licenses in addition to supplemental purchases for professional development as well as the teacher toolbox. This contract was approximately $1.9 million. Purchases continued after the purchase contract expired on June 30th, 2020. The Department of Teaching and Learning and certain schools continued to pay for site licenses that allowed the continued use of the software. These new purchases were made through individual RFQs based on the school board's annual budget authorization for instructional materials because Curriculum Associates, the creator of iReady, was one of multiple pre-approved vendors for instructional materials. So why was this audit performed? In fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2021, the OIG received 2 complaints related to iReady purchases. The OIG concluded the allegations were unsubstantiated. However, in the 2021 complaint, the OIG noted a lack of internal controls and procedures for the purchase and use of iReady software by middle schools. As a result, the OIG included the audit in the annual work plan. What did we conclude? Number 1, we found that the vendor's billings were consistent with the purchase contract and appropriately funded. During fiscal years 2017 through 2022, the district paid Curriculum Associates a total of $12.6 million through 62 invoices for iReady reading and mathematics site licenses and for supplemental purchases, which included implementation services, professional development, student assessments, and teacher toolboxes. Our review of the purchase orders and paid invoices found the billings were consistent with the contract prices and yearly purchases were within the board's approved annual budget authorization for instructional materials. We also concluded that the cost incurred for iReady computer software purchases were allowable. Some of the major funding sources were the General Fund, the ESSER Fund, and Federal Title I program funds. Supporting documentation for these purchases included the district's school-wide plans, comprehensive needs assessments, and the FDOE project award notification for grants. The costs incurred appeared reasonable and allowable by the various federal, state, and local funding sources. Although the vendor's billings were consistent with the purchase contract and the expenditures were funded by appropriate sources, some deficiencies were identified in the remaining conclusions. In the second conclusion, the OIG found that the SERP was not updated with the Federal Department of Education. The SERP is a comprehensive evidence-based reading plan, which provides evidence-based sequence of reading instruction and strategies submitted to the FDOE annually to document the specific use of the evidence-based reading instruction allocation. Each SERP submitted to and approved by the FDOE indicated that grades K through 5 would use iReady adaptive technology for diagnostic assessment, and grades 6 through 12 would use Reading Plus for screening and formative assessments. Additionally, when intervention or intensive intervention is required for grades 6 through 12, the Spire reading and Wilson reading system may be used. iReady was not an intervention tool indicated in the district's annual SERPs for grades 6 through 12. Our review of iReady computer software and site license purchases from July 1st, 2016 through March 31st, 2022 found that 10 secondary schools, grades 6 through 12, made 15 purchases totaling approximately $143,000 for iReady reading site licenses. These purchases were funded through the general fund and various grant programs. Although changes to the district's SERP can be updated online via the FDOE's SIMS portal, the district did not make any request to update the SERP to identify iReady as an approved reading progress tool for middle schools. On May 10th, 2023, the school board approved the fiscal year 2023-24 SERP, which did not include iReady as a tool for secondary school use. In the final conclusion, the OIG found that there were no formal procedures for middle schools' purchases and use of iReady instructional materials, including software. The SERP did not include iReady for use in secondary school instruction. 2 of the 10 secondary schools that purchased and used iReady were identified as low-performing schools with differentiated accountability and were granted FDOE approval to use iReady as the intensive intervention reading tool until the expiration of the grant in fiscal year 2021. At the grant expiration, one of the 2 DA schools requested continued use but was denied by district officials. However, the school continued to use the software. We determined that there were no written procedures or guidelines established for the purchase of instructional materials outside the grade levels specified in the SERP. Guidelines need to be communicated between various departments. Some secondary schools were approved to purchase iReady with federal funds, even though the software was not listed on the SERP. In fiscal year 2021, a tracking spreadsheet for monitoring district-approved and unapproved curriculum materials was developed by the teaching and learning departments, but no evidence exists on how school staff receive this information. The Chief Academic Officer indicated that any updates related to the use of curriculum materials is disseminated to the principals and district leadership. To ensure compliance with state to ensure compliance with state requirements and the district's SERP, definitive rules and guidelines for evidence-based instructional materials use should be established in writing that streamline purchases, that ensure adherence to management directives by local schools, that establish protocols for documenting approvals, exceptions, and non-compliance, that ensure procedures are distributed and available to all related departments and local schools, and implement and maintain tracking procedures to ensure all schools use the recommended instructional materials, including software, in the CERP, the SERP. At this time, that concludes the presentation of the audit of iReady, and the floor is open for any questions.
Thank you, Danielle. Any questions, comments of the committee members?
Leandre here. Just to thank you. After hearing some of our previous reports, this is a good one. Although there were some field decisions made that I feel are field decisions made, good decisions made by the principals, although it may not have gone through the proper procedure, but it was for the betterment of the school or the students at the time. And that's just the way I'm going to take those field decisions. that were made regarding the SERP. But it's just good to have a good, clean, all procurement procedures were followed. What was budgeted is what was expended. That's just good to hear this morning. So thank you to everyone. I know it may not be enough, but all I can say today is thank you.
I concur with that. Any other questions or comments?
I mean, I probably shouldn't
Yes,
speak
Heather.
up. I probably shouldn't speak up since we received a thank you, but I just wanted to also just let the audit committee know there were a lot of additional procedures that were implemented during the FY23 year, during changes as a result of the State Board of Education rules. So now all online educational software are reviewed by the TCC committee. And so we're going through now a backlog of all of those softwares that hadn't previously been through the process. And so that is going to take some time to work through. But know that the IT department is working very closely with purchasing, with legal, as well as the curriculum department to make sure all of the softwares are reviewed and approved. And we have additional technology that we're able to utilize now and implemented during 23 as well, where we can block softwares that are not approved. So we have significant enhancements. I wish I could say it was a result of the audit, but it is not. It is a result of this changes in the State Board of Education rules, but it actually does align very closely with this as well.
Great, thank you, Heather.
Mr. Chair,
Questions or comments? Yes, Leandra?
Catherine is on. Someone was trying to say something online.
It's Tammy
Okay.
McDonald, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say we're critical when we see challenges and faults and weaknesses, and I concur with the other members of the audit committee. Congratulations both to the audit committee, to our internal audit staff as well as the school board staff for a job well done with this.
Great.
I did have one question, Mr. Chair. The SERP, is that just a button? I'm ignorant in that space.
It's an academic document. Dr. Sheffield can speak more to it, but we're not required as a district to be limited to the programs that are approved in the SERP. Schools have the option to use and supplement with other online providers as well as written instructional materials. And that's why you saw the use of other funds like ESSER funds, like Title I funds, because we do give our schools that flexibility. But Dr. Sheffield can speak more specifically to the SERP.
Good morning. Yes, the SERP, the Comprehensive Evidence-Based Reading Plan, is just where we outlined all of the interventions and the programs per se that we would utilize to close those instructional gaps that are found. In this case, iReady was the tool that we would have used in K-5, and as indicated within the report, for secondary school, it would have been Reading Plus. And they were select elementary schools based on their DA status, where they receive additional funding, that they would have been able to utilize iReady because they needed a second form of intervention. So that is the SERP plan.
Great, thank you, Chris. Any other comments? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve this report.
Weigel, I approve motion.
Leandre, second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Passed unanimously, 6-0. Okay, we'll go on to item 5.2, audit of HVAC filters replacement services contract. I think Andre's going to handle that.
Good morning, everybody, and I am here to present the audit of the HVAC filter replacement services contract. The objective of the audit was to determine whether the vendor billings and deliverables were in compliance with the terms of the purchase contract. Just a little bit of background, the school board approved the contract for a 2-year period from February 21st, 2019 through February 20th, 2021 with an option for 3 one-year renewals. The contract was for the procurement of air filter replacement services for the HVAC systems and was awarded to 2 vendors for serving district facilities located in different geographical locations. Filter Pro was selected to service the facilities located south of Southern Boulevard, and Bonded Filter was selected to service the district facilities located north of Southern Boulevard and the Glades area. During the period of February 2019 and December of 2022, the district spent approximately $3.8 million on this contract. The first conclusion was that the terms and prices for the emergency services were not codified in the purchasing contract. The OIG reviewed all invoices paid between February and March of 2022, totaling $214,479.04 for 497 invoices submitted by both of the vendors. The first vendor, Bonded Filter, we looked at 363 invoices, and those showed no exceptions. However, 57 of the 134 invoices submitted by Filter Pro were billed at higher than the contract prices, totaling $1,202.28. It should be noted that the higher prices were due to the 1-inch filters that were MERV 13s billed at $9.50 instead of the $6.92 for the MERV 8 filters. As a result of these, we'll discuss more about it in conclusion number 2. And the OIG decided to expand the review to include all 3,725 invoices for $2,098,748 submitted by Filter Pro during the February 2019 through December 2022. The expanded review found that Filter Pro billed the district an additional $9,112 for emergency services. These emergency services were documented email requests from Environmental and Conservation Service Department to maintenance for emergency filter replacements. However, the contract in effect at the time did not have terms or prices for these emergency services, thereby permitting the vendor to charge any amount without prior district acceptance. Maintenance did not maintain any documentation showing approval of the emergency prices billed by Filter Pro. It should be noted from the original 363 invoices and an additional 100 invoices that we sampled from Bonded Filter that no emergency service billing was charged from them. Conclusion number 2 is in regards to changes in filter quality and service frequency not timely submitted to the school board for approval. In August of 2020, to further improve the indoor air quality for the district facilities due to the COVID pandemic, maintenance notified the vendors that the district was moving forward to upgrade the 2- and 4-inch MERV 8 filters to the MERV 13 filter. However, those prices for the MERV 13 2-inch and 4-inch filters were not approved by the school board until February 17, 2021 during the contract renewal. Furthermore, in regards of the upgrading of the 1-inch filters for facility service by Filter Pro, on March 25th, 2021, maintenance notified Filter Pro of the district's plan to also include upgrading the 1-inch air filters from MERV 8 to MERV 13. On April 15, 2021, Filter Pro submitted a price quote of $12.56 per filter and change of the service frequency from a monthly service to a quarterly for the MERV 13 1-inch filter. However, the school board never formally approved Filter Pro's quoted prices and change in frequency for the MERV 13 1-inch filters. Maintenance did acknowledge that they did not question the vendor's billing of the MERV 13 1-inch filters at $9.50 because it was lower than the vendor's April 15th quote of $12.56. As a result, the district incurred an additional $10,139 for 3,930 MERV 13 1-inch filters compared to the $6.92 contract price for the MERV 8 1-inch filters from February 19, 2019 through December 2022. Staff confirmed that they were aware of the change in rate and service schedule. However, the contract was not amended to include those changes. After the OIG informed maintenance of the omission, these changes were presented to and approved by the school board during the third renewal in November 30th, 2022. Subsequently to that, the OIG reviewed 20 paid invoices totaling $44,907 for filter services between November 30th, 2022 and December 31st, 2022 after the contract renewal to review, and they concluded that the prices were consistent with the new updated contract. Conclusion number 3 would be some facilities did not receive the upgraded higher quality MERV 13 1-inch filters. As noted, in April of 2021, facilities serviced by Filter Pro located south of Southern Boulevard started receiving the upgraded MERV 13 1-inch filters. However, facilities serviced by Bonded Filter, the locations for the facilities north of Southern Boulevard and the Glades area did not receive these upgraded MERV 13 filters. During the district plan upgrade of the filters, the district engineer could not ensure that the MERV 13 1-inch filters would not damage the HVAC systems. So maintenance decided to test the performance of these MERV 13 1-inch filters on the HVAC systems located south of Southern Boulevard, serviced by Filter Pro, to determine if the filters were safe from the system. These schools have been receiving these facilities have been receiving the MERV 13 1-inch filters for more than 2 years, since April 2021. On March 17, 2023, maintenance indicated that they would not upgrade the 1-inch filters from MERV 8 to MERV 13 for the facilities serviced by Bonded Filter until they have discussed with and received recommendations from the District Environmental and Conservation Services Department. Moving to conclusion number 4, the non-compliance with the contract terms for filter replacement services. While planning for the audit, OIG and maintenance staff jointly conducted on-site observations of service filters at 4 sample schools, which 2 schools serviced by each of the vendors. For the inspection, there was 437 air filters that we inspected. 421 were replaceable filters, and 16 were for washable or reusable filters. The result of the inspection showed that a total of 344 filters, 328 of them were replaceable, and all 16 of the washable filters, for approximately 79%, did not have the required service dates that are needed on each of the filters. In May of 2023, the OIG conducted a follow-up observation at the 4 additional sample schools to determine if the corrections were taken for recording the service dates on these filters. For these additional 4 sample schools, it was a total of 360 air filters that we inspected, and as a result, 261 of the filters did not have the required service dates recorded on the filters, although maintenance was notified of this non-compliance 12 months ago. Both vendors continue to label only the filters at the front, if any, for air conditioning units requiring multiple replaceable filters in them. It should be noted that Filter Pro did make the corrections and began writing the service date for the washable filters. However, Bonded Filter still has not. In this image, you can see for the replaceable filters, on the left is Filter Pro, where you can see the initials and date of the service on one of the filters. We removed the filter below to show that the filters behind them are not being dated and initialed to confirm the replacement of these filters. And on the right is an example of the HVAC unit for Bonded Filter. As you can see, only the first initial filter is dated and initial to confirm the replacement. However, none of the filters below or behind these filters were dated. In this example are the washable filters. These are units that have filters that can be cleaned out and replaced in the unit. As you can see on the left on our follow-up observation, you can see that Filter Pro has began putting a label on the unit to indicate the date of service. However, on the right bonded filter, you could see that the unit has no label, and below is an image of the filter that was in the unit. There's no way to confirm if the filters are being cleaned out. Continuing with conclusion number 4, the non-compliance with the service schedule. What we did is we compared the most recent invoice service dates to the service dates on the prior invoices for 10 randomly selected schools and found that the filters were not serviced in accordance with the contract requirements. For Filter Pro, all 5 sample schools were late in servicing the filters by 11 to 57 days later than the contract. And the 5 sample schools for bonded filter had some filters serviced earlier than the schedule by 2 to 14 days, and 2 of the schools had some filters serviced 3 to 10 days late. Moving to conclusion number 5, the technical library had not been updated for 7 years. The technical library is a document that contains the information of the filters being serviced at the facilities, such as the size of the filter, the type of the filter, and each HVAC unit, their location within the facility that's being serviced. The information is used to provide the vendors and is provided by the vendors and maintained by the maintenance as required by the purchasing contract on a yearly basis. A complete and accurate technical library is necessary for maintenance to perform HVAC maintenance and reconcile invoice information with the actual equipment at each location. Failure to update this document could result in omitting new or replacement equipment that was in service during renovations or repaired, resulting in inaccurate filter information. Furthermore, the technical library on file maintained by maintenance was not updated from September 12, 2014 through April 15th of 2022. After notification from the OIG, maintenance received updated documents from both vendors on May 16th, 2022. The information provided by bonded filter complied with the contract's requirements. However, Filter Pro only included the size and types of filters, but did not include the filter's location information within the facility. Without this specific information, maintenance could not rely on the technical library to verify the accuracy of the vendor's billing or that the service frequencies are in compliance with the contract. After receiving the updated technical library, they appeared accurate with one minor exception. During our on-site observation of the 4 schools, we compared the actual quantities of the filters on-site to the quantities recorded in the technical library, and only one additional filter documented in the technical library was not found at the school. When reviewing the technical library, 2 the filters replaced and not replaced at the units on the site, it resulted in $1,033 in overbilling. For bonded filter, when reviewing the filters that were replaced, there were no exceptions found at that location. However, Pahokee High resulted in $945 in overbilling. It was noted that the technical library had not been updated for 2 AC units that have been unplugged, and looking at the filters that were inside these units, the filters had not been replaced since August 12th and December 17th of 2019. However, the district was billed by the vendor for a total of 133 1-inch replaceable units during 29 replacement cycles for these 2 units that were not in service, resulting in $945 in overbilling. For Filter Pro, we reviewed Seminole Trails Elementary, and we discovered that 2 4-inch filters in 1 unit had not been replaced since June 15th of 2021. However, the district was billed for 3 cycles, resulting in $88.14 in overbilling. Spanish River High, however, the technical library did not have the filter locations. The technical library provided by Filter Pro included types and sizes of filters. However, the actual locations of the filters were not listed on the library. Therefore, we required the vendor's assistance on site to determine the accuracy of the library. After having the vendor's assistance, no exceptions were noted at this school. And lastly, conclusion number 6, there are no monitoring procedures. As of June 20th, 2023, maintenance did not have any formal written procedures for monitoring the HVAC replacement services. According to maintenance, the HVAC technicians verify if the filters were serviced in accordance with the contract when they were on site performing a routine HVAC maintenance. However, there was no documentation maintained documenting the verifications or their results. Any questions?
I have one to go from, just to get this right, to go from the 8 to the 13, that was requested by the school board, right, to increase it? But they just didn't follow the correct procurement policies when that happened?
If I could address that, you know, COVID and the pandemic was a very unique time for the district and created a lot of challenges in the area of procurement.
Yeah.
There were contracts that we had in place that, you know, we didn't realize that we might need to have a different type of air filter because we would have included that in the pricing when we initially went out. And then there were also issues because things were not available during the pandemic, so we had to get something else that was not originally on the bid. So what the purchasing department did was work very closely with the legal department to come up with what we were allowed to do without having to go and do another RFP. To go through an RFP process, if you're familiar with that, can take up to 9 months. And during the pandemic, that is something that is, you don't have that ability. So what legal allowed us to do was to go back to the vendors that we, and I'm looking at Ms. Morales, but she was, I don't know that she was involved in it, but allowed us to go back to the vendor to get additional pricing for those items that we needed. And then we were allowed to just add it as an amendment, not actually formally go back to the board unless we were asking for more money. Because if it was going to fall within the original spend, it was just it wasn't considered a significant change to the contract. So the purchasing department, we feel that we were following the proper procedures and requirements, and there wasn't anything additional we were required to do. And the vendor was then billing us based on the appropriate pricing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the vendor didn't take it upon themselves to increase it and then.
No, that was directed by us. So if I provided more information than I was supposed to, but I thought it's important for everybody to understand.
Yeah.
It was very unique. This is not how we operated pre-pandemic. So we had to work quickly and then make sure we were doing everything legally, but still be able to meet the needs of the district.
Okay.
Okay, other questions or comments?
I had a question. I was just curious. I
Yes.
mean, luckily, the dollar-wise, it's not really a big number. But I'm just curious about, like, you know, the safety of the people in the buildings. Is there a process now to kind of monitor? Has that been created to make sure these filters and things are, because?
So yes, we're actually hiring a person to go around and spot check the vendor. This is a large district. There's a lot of air filters. There's going to be errors that are probably going to continue to be caught. But yes, we're hiring somebody and we're putting a process in place.
Okay.
Leandre, one question.
Yes.
So we don't have an issue with the contractors that's selected. They're good. I'm hearing multiple things in the narrative. So I just want to make sure that there are no issues that exist with the contractor or with the processes that are now in place.
From a procurement process, we don't have issues with the vendor. You know, I would then refer it back to Ms. Marshall if on the performance side of it.
We met with both contractors and we discussed all of the findings. Both contractors were very receptive to the audit and are tightening up their processes as well. So at this time, I don't have any issues with them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions, comments? Hearing none, I'd accept a motion to approve this report.
Weigel, so move.
Leandre,
Second.
second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Pass unanimously, 6-0. Okay, we'll go on now to the audit of school bus safety and inspections and maintenance. Andre, you're on again.
All right. Now, this would be the audit of the school bus safety inspections and maintenance. Our objectives for this audit were to determine the extent of compliance with the applicable state and safety guidelines for the school bus safety inspections, as well as assessing the adequacy of the district procedures for maintaining and servicing the school buses. Just a little bit of background, the Transportation Services Department is responsible for maintaining both the yellow fleet and white fleet, which are the school buses and non-school bus vehicles. As of March 22nd of 2023, the total number of active school buses was 808 buses. And to protect the safety of transported students, and as mandated by the Florida Administrative Code, the school buses are equipped with certain specialized safety equipment. The inspection documentation that is kept is to be completed as required by the Florida School Bus Safety Inspection Manual referenced in the Florida Administrative Code. The first conclusion was it has continued to be improvements in maintaining these school bus safety devices. On April of 2023, the OIG conducted unannounced visits at all 6 of the district's transportation facilities. The OIG staff, as well as the transportation staff, jointly inspected the school buses and reviewed the post-trip passenger check systems, student crossing arms, student arm signals, video camera systems, as well as the wheelchair lifts if they were installed on 84 of the 808 sampled buses. The sampled buses that had one or more of the non-working devices had decreased from 65% during our initial sampling of the buses in May of 2016 to currently 2%, which is 2 of the 84 sampled in the April 2023 observations.
Wow.
So for the 2 buses that had non-working safety devices, it should be noted that it was not indicated that devices were not functioning on the bus driver attendant pre- and post-trip inspection report. Conclusion number 2, the mandatory monthly safety inspections were timely completed by certified inspectors. Just wanted to note that of the 84 sampled buses, all of them were timely completed by certified inspectors. We also sampled an additional 90 safety inspection forms, and those were also all timely completed by certified safety inspectors, as well as reviewed by certified service managers in accordance of the Florida Department of Education. It should be noted that 5 of the 174 school bus safety inspection forms were missing some required information, such as the service manager's initials to confirm that the required maintenance that needed to be done on any deficiencies, as well as the date the bus was returned to service after the repairs were completed. And also, of the 174 inspection forms that we reviewed, that required repairs, 54 of them required repairs, and they were all noted and properly recorded in the asset work system. Conclusion number 3 was for the bus driver and attendant pre- and post-trip report. It should be noted that during the 84 sampled buses, we did request the pre- and post-trip reports for the previous day to determine if they were completed properly. As a result, there were a total of 146 trips that were performed, and transportation was unable to locate reports for the morning and afternoon trips for 1 bus, and 6 reports did not indicate a completion of a post-trip inspection report by the bus driver. And lastly, conclusion number 4, no exceptions for the sampled bus video surveillance recording. During this audit, we requested video footage for 12 of the 84 sampled buses for the dates and times that we performed the observations, and transportation was able to timely provide us with the recordings. It should be noted that the prior audit, 17% of the video footage was not being able to be provided. However, this time it was able to be provided by transportation. Any
Okay.
questions?
Thank you, Andre. Questions, comments?
I would like to make one comment. I would like to congratulate Mr. Searchwell and Mr. Sanchez. I mean, this is a massive undertaking.
Sure.
Besides the fact of trying to get drivers, trying to get the routes completed, trying to get kids there, and all the hectic and all the chaos that goes along with starting, you guys actually just knocked it out of the park. And it shows that the department is taking that seriously, that safety, not just getting the buses out there, but getting the kids there safe and the drivers. It really shows a tremendous amount of work, and really appreciate your cooperation. I know it's a very stressful time, but thank you very much.
Thank you for saying that. Appreciate that, and definitely Shane, Latoya, you guys deserve a lot of credit, but also the drivers, mechanics, the supervisors. You know, it takes everybody to make this happen. So, and I appreciate the emphasis on this by the auditors to help us get our act together. And but you can see that the results are there. We're really focused on this, and we're trying to get the job done and making sure everybody's safe on the bus and around the bus. Every citizen in Palm Beach County who has to occupy these streets and share these streets with us. Appreciate that.
Well, again, congratulations. I think that report is one of the more positive reports. And again, you know, you've got so many difficulties in terms of getting drivers, getting them educated, and this type of thing. So again, I commend you all and your department also.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm going to echo those thank yous. As I said, we sat here over a year ago, some time ago, talking about the buses, and you asked for that additional time. And this is what additional time looks like, and it is, I know some of the words that came out of my mouth at the time, and I'm just glad that the time we are here now with only a 2% versus a 64%, and the things that were requested, they follow through, and then, you know, now we're here in a good place. So, yeah, it's a good thing. It's in a good place.
Yeah. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Okay, any further questions, comments? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the report.
Leandre makes the motion.
I second.
Second, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously, 6-0. Andre, good job with both of those. Appreciate it. Okay, now we'll move on to item 5.4, special review of the band program at Howell Watkins Middle School. Susie?
Good morning. This was a special review that was brought to us to our attention by the principal of the school. The objectives of our review were to look at the band program's monies and determine that they were all properly accounted for, and also to check the extent of compliance with procedures as far as money collection, disbursements, fundraising, and field trips. We looked at the program for the last school year from July 1st of 2022 up through the month of May when we were there. Some background on the band program at H.L. Watkins Middle School. It is important that you think about this, that the band program at the middle school is a curriculum course. It is offered for credit, and that's important when we get later into this, as opposed to a high school, which is also curriculum, but they have some extracurricular components to it. So as of May 1st, there were 61 students enrolled in the band program at H.L. Watkins. 15 of those students were in the keyboarding classes. And as I said, middle school band is not considered an extracurricular activity. It is strictly for credit. Students receive a grade. They also have an auxiliary, they call it an auxiliary drill or flag, baton team, had many different names, with 17 students that performed with the band. And the auxiliary team is an after-school program. It's a club that meets, and they are not enrolled in band class as part of the participation. So in January of 2023, the principal came to the IG's office with some potential noncompliances regarding the band director. Specifically, he was concerned about fundraising activities were being conducted without his prior approval. The band director was failing to put money into the drop safe on the day of collections. Funds collected for uniforms were paid to pay for field trip expenses, and uniforms were being purchased from a non-district approved vendor. So let's address the principal's concerns first. Regarding the fundraising activities, based on the available documentation, there were 3 fundraisers that were conducted by the band during that period, and all of them had pre-approved fundraising applications. So based on that, all the fundraising activities had received prior approval. As far as deposit delays, as I've said to many a principal, we can only audit paper. And all of the documents that were available for the deposits were dated, and the dates matched what were on the drop safe log. So the principal's concern that money was being held is not evidenced by the documentation that's available to us to review. The uniform fee, and when I say uniform, really it's more of a performance outfit. It was intended to be like a sweatsuit uniform is what was going to be purchased. So at the band parents meeting that was held at the beginning of the school year, the band director requested a $150 fee from each parent, each student, 75 of which would be used for this uniform, and 75 was to be used to cover other operations for supplies, travel, food, incentives. And in the end, the uniform fee was actually refunded back to the parents because of the next one, when we start talking about it, where he thought the purchasing rules, the uniforms were going to be purchased by a non-district approved vendor. So what happened was the band director discovered that the vendor he wanted to use was not approved, a non-approved district vendor. So instead what he did is he refunded the $75 of those who paid back to the parents. And the vendor he told them just go ahead and buy directly from that vendor. And the vendor set up an online store for the school to use, and the school would receive a commission. Well, not many people bought this uniform because the school received a whopping $25. We tried to speak to parents, make contact with them, and on the few that we were able to speak to, 2 of them said they did buy it, but most parents did not buy the uniform. So in the end, it was kind of, he was doing a circumvention of the district's purchasing rules in that if you're going to collect money from the students, you need to put it into the internal accounts and you need to purchase through an approved vendor with a district check. So in addition to these items, the auxiliary team, which is the club that performs with them, they also had purchased their uniforms and costuming from non-district approved vendors, which was something separate towards the end of the audit. We looked at all of the revenues that were collected by the program and how all the revenues that were collected were used. And we determined that one of the things you have to remember is that middle school band programs, they get very limited funding through budgeted funds. At this school, the situation was $4,150 combined, and that included instrument repairs and piano tuning. And in this school's situation, that's actually high for the band because they don't have a chorus. Part of that money, if the school had a choral program, would have been divided over to the chorus as well. So they rely on the supplemental funding sources such as your fees, fundraising, donations, in order to participate in any performance activities. Without the additional funding, it's strictly going to be a class, and they're going to just be meeting in the classroom to learn how to play instruments and not extend that into the performance side. So the Best practices and your DOE Red Book both recommend that any program, clubs, or any kind of a program should develop an estimated budget as far as club expenses, and the band director did acknowledge that a budget was not created for the band program. Instead, what ended up happening was that the monies from both the auxiliary team and the band were being commingled into the one band account. So it was hard to determine the source of funding. But in the end, instead of having a separate club account, so team collections for the auxiliary actually only ended up being about 10% of the total band revenue programs, but 30% of the band revenue program money went to the auxiliary team. Collections used in the end were mostly for charter bus transportation and also for those costumes, which was the 30%. There's a potential of $1,000 in auxiliary team collections that were unaccounted for. The auxiliary team were also requested to pay the same $150 fee, of which they did. A lot of them supposedly did pay. The amount of people that paid were based on the club sponsor's memory of 11 members paying for the amounts that were provided to us, but there were no receipts, nothing with dates on it, and everything, like I said, was from memory. So we identified only 3 payments actually being deposited of $450 that came from auxiliary team members. And because of that, if the amount that was supposedly collected did occur, there's about $1,000 that we cannot account for. One of the items of concern that the principal had was related to the fundraising revenue. They held a chocolate fundraiser, and of course, those can be problematic in that you hand out chocolate bars to students, and a lot of times students do not return the chocolate bars or the money. And so we looked, and I asked the band director about inventory, and he actually said there was only about 10 bars left in inventory. So based on purchasing records, there was a total of $6,900 that should have been collected, but only $5,300 that were deposited. And so as a result, you have $1,540 in revenue that's unaccounted for. The band director did keep a separate list of students that he had handed out the bars to, but he did not, there was no information on this list as far as dates that money was returned, so there was no way to reconcile that list to the collection records. And we did check, the band director had completed the sales, he had completed all of the financial training for sponsors at the beginning of the school year, but he did not complete any of the required sales item inventory report to reconcile the money. Before we get to questions, I failed to make a slide. We have the best editors in the district, and I failed to put an extra slide into this deck. I apologize, but there was one additional finding that had to do with the band was using a non-approved vendor to transport band students. We found where 2 separate trips where they went to performances, instead of using a district-approved charter bus, they were using a vendor called Sounds of Success to transport the students, which were not on the approved list. The district has a vetted list of buses, bus services, and vendors that have already been vetted out for insurance and safety. So this was something we had to bring to the principal's attention. And that concludes this audit.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Questions? Comments?
I mean, I have a question about the one that you don't have a slide for, I guess, to get it started.
Sorry.
No, I saw, like, do we know that sounds, or, I mean, not only is there a concern if they're not vetted about, like, if their safety, but, and getting the kids to and from, but if was their insurance not capable, like, were they really putting the district significantly at risk too, like, in case there was something that happened? I'm just curious for more information on.
Potentially, because I don't think there was any insurance collected, so I don't know if Heather knows any more about it.
Okay.
Well, No, I didn't look into, because these are after the fact.
Yeah,
These
I
are,
was
they're
just-
using vendors that are not approved by the district, and so if they use an approved vendor, we know that we vetted all that information. So I just wanted to let the committee know, because I know that this has been a concern in the past, that we have these reports that are presented, and then what actually happens. And so I spoke to Dr. Joseph Lee, who is the instructional superintendent over H.L. Watkins, and he assured me that now that they have the report, which was really at the request of the principal, they are now going to speak with the teacher, and they will document the non-compliance that was noted within this report.
And did we get this, I mean, I don't know if you can even say it, but did we get the sense it was just sloppiness, or that there could have been theft of like $2,500 here from, I guess that's probably not something you really can know, but.
Yeah, I mean,
Something, Mark?
yeah, I mean, I couldn't confirm that, but
Yeah.
I mean, based on reading it, it did seem that it was more, to use your words, sloppiness. He did take the trainings.
Yeah.
He just didn't, and, he just didn't follow the actual procedures. And so, we are going to take this report. We're going to require that the individual take the trainings again this year. And then, like I said, the instructional superintendent, as well as the principal, will sit down with the band director to reinforce what the procedures are and document him in an appropriate manner.
We will follow up on these, as always. Any finding, either a review, audit, or investigation every 6 months, we will follow up to see what the process is and the conditions. And one of the things that I presented at the last board meeting, and Bob, who's in charge of our follow-ups, we are going to make sure that we get more detailed information and ensure that there is some corrective actions taken where we don't have repeat findings, or where, as in the last audit committee, there was the same staff handling cash and no changes we're making. So and the district is committed to making sure that we just don't, oh, okay, we got another finding. They have that commitment as well. And one of the things that we identified in the follow-up policy, it states that if a director or principal has a continued finding, repeat findings, or if they failed to correct something, the policy requires that their annual evaluation reflect that. So that is something that's a little bit more of an incentive for the individuals in charge to ensure that the issues are corrected.
Yeah. No, I do appreciate that the principal thought there was an issue, so they brought it to the attention so this could get, looked at.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to do my best to remain objective in my response, but it seems like there's something internal taking place in order for the principal to even do this. So in his own infinite wisdom, he made the decision to request that because something was noticed. Being objective, is that employee still employed? Because it seems a little intentional in what's taking place in this report. So, and I'm asking that question, if I could, before moving into a little further discussion, if it's a safe place for me to ask.
He is still employed. I reached out to the principal, and like I said, I was able to speak directly to Dr. Lee, who is the instructional superintendent over the principal. They're taking the report very seriously, the findings from the report, and they will be working directly with the band director to make sure that he actually follows the procedures in this upcoming year, because there is actually more money for the music program. That was one other item that I did want to mention, because there have been a lot of positive articles in the paper about the district's investment in music and the music program. We were able to utilize our ESSER dollars. I know that's not directly related to this, but we've also used our referendum dollars as well to invest in music. And although they can't use those funds for trips, which was mentioned in the audit, we are allowing them for the purchase of musical instruments, as well as all the supplies like the sheet music and the reeds and whatnot. So our district really is investing in the music program, and so it's very important that we have high-quality staff in that area, and the regional superintendent or instructional superintendent is taking this very seriously. And that's what I wanted to reinforce and why I spoke to him directly, and to confirm that the report, they are going to take action based on this report.
And the more objective piece of it is the report. I'm just going to say it. We shouldn't be at this point having this level of report because something was noticed. And yes, for accountability purposes, I can respect the principal or all the actions that have taken place at the school. However, I think this is an internal personnel matter that could have been handled with the school, with the principal and that employee prior to a report coming public. Now, for accountability purposes, yes, you could do something of this nature. My greatest concern is the slide that doesn't exist. It is using vendors that are not on the approved list. It's more important to me than the 1,000 to 5,000 because we went from 64% to 2%. What's working is working. Now let's work within that parameter. And yes, that bus may be whatever. It may not have been this. It may have been that. But work within the parameters and the processes that are established for the district. So I'm going to remain silent.
I just want to mention that when the district operating budget is being used, they have to use a district vendor. There's no way to get around using a district vendor. So this is the funds in the school internal accounts. That is part of what the Inspector General audits. That does not flow through our PeopleSoft system. And so it doesn't have the same level of controls where we can stop it. But all of the purchases that are going through the district operating and also our special revenue funds, they have to use a district-approved vendor. There is no way around that.
So is there no, I guess in that sense, is there no part, like if I'll use the band teacher, if the band teacher, hires a bus, she can just hire a bus, pay for themselves. It's not even like it has to go through the principal's approval or anything. There's no process for.
No, there is a process at the school level, but it's more manual because it's not going through the district ERP system.
So that argument, you could argue that maybe the principal knew they approved the use of the non.
It could be possible for a principal to approve the use of a non-district approved vendor. It's possible I don't know if this principal, I should have checked this, whether he was new to the school, because that could have been why he presented it to the Inspector General's office versus handling it internally, just because it was his first year, he doesn't know, and so that is something that I can try to look to see when he moved to that school, but that's the only reason why I would think that he would raise it to the IG versus handling it internally.
And just to clarify the answer to Ms. Dobbin's question, the Code of Ethics and other district policies require whether the money's flowing through the ERP or through school internal accounts, you still have to use district.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I was just trying to figure out if there was a process breakdown, if say this person, he picked this vendor, he got this invoice approved at the school level before he went and hired it, was there a breakdown in that person not approving something that they shouldn't have approved, or is this really one person going rogue and just?
One of the continued issues, and we have two people that raised their hand, we see that we've seen is that the principals will rely on the treasurer to notice and tell the employee, this is not an approved vendor, this is not appropriate. However, the treasurer does not have the authority or is not in the structure to say no. No. You know what I mean? She does the employee doesn't report to the treasurer. So if the treasurer is not able to get hold of the principal or doesn't tell the principal that this is not approved, there's kind of sometimes the finger pointing going between the treasurer to the principal saying, I didn't know. And I think that's something that is kind of a continued concern because the principal has hundreds of things to sign off on. So they really rely on the treasurer to notice them and tell them that this is not appropriate.
And if I could just mention also, but once the service is performed, even if it was not an approved vendor, you still have to pay. I mean, at least that's what we've been.
Oh, 100%, yeah, 100%.
So a lot of this is, it is after the fact, even at a lot of times by the time it gets to the treasurer as well.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. There's another layer of control, but we still see a lot of control breakdown there is when you make any purchases over $1,000, you have to prepare an internal funds purchase orders for the principal approval. But even with that, like Ms. Michael said, the principal relies on the treasurer to tell him whether this vendor is an approved vendor or not. That's number one. Number two is during our internal funds audit, we often found in a lot of cases, they didn't have the purchase orders available. So they did not prepare the purchase order as they required it in a lot of cases.
Okay, Kathy Weigel, you had a question?
Just going to make a statement as a former principal. Everybody's kind of explained it now, but there is a process for sure of anybody who uses internal funds. So when I was a principal, I would say everything has to have a purchase order. I don't care if you're buying something that's a quarter. If I'm going to cut a check for it, I want a purchase order. And so that was my stopgap. But if people want to go around the rules, they seem to be able to do that. And it doesn't matter what rules we have. So it would appear to me that there were several different violations that the employee did to sort of run the program in a cavalier fashion. And I'm sure with Dr. Lee involved now that these things will be addressed. But there are specific rules, as Randy Law just said, that we have to follow. And I don't think that's changed. So I applaud the principal for noting that something didn't feel right or see right or whatever to bring, when Susan is called to your school, that's a huge issue. Sorry, Susie.
Okay, question from Catherine Kerner.
Hi, good. I just wanted to reiterate a couple things, and I think Dr. Weigel already said too, and from a principal sitting currently in her seat right now in her office, there are absolutely parameters in place, and everyone said it, but I just wanted to reiterate it, that it is true that your treasurer is that person that you are utilizing and that trust factor, which actually, the role they play is so critical at a school center that we could advocate for them to be paid more. But, this accountant work that they do is most definitely for them to be verifying before something kind of comes to that principal. And we have, this folder of checks and purchase orders and things that we're going through, that not only has the employee followed through with all of the expectations that they've been trained on and the procedures and the policies in place, but that the treasurer then is also just kind of verifying that they're utilizing an approved vendor or that this is one of the buses from the approved list and such, because beyond all the work of the principal and everything else they're doing, if we're double checking everyone's work there, I'm going to double check that the treasurer has double checked that the employee followed. It just, at that point, we could be checking every single check that's written. So there is an element of work in the responsibility, and I think that's been reiterated. The other thing I had raised my hand for, and then I heard Heather mention it as well, was the time at which Dr. Charles had been at that school from the point at which he requested the internal audit from the Inspector General's office, because of the fact that they could have had the internal audit, when a principal changes, there's an audit done. So some things might have been uncovered. He might have started looking deeper and realized it was as large as it was, and how long the employee himself had been in practice at that school, or what things had been happening, or even within the treasurer's office, so on, that had been taking place or outside of the treasurer's office to circumvent the policies and procedures in place, such that Mr. Charles, so when there was a question about how long has this employee been there, how was he able to get away with it? When you arrive at a school as a new principal, you're kind of understanding, learning the ground, doing everything. And so if he started to uncover something, or something came up and he addressed it, then it could have been a timeline factor as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that he was there and had the duration of time to address that employee for those behaviors, to correct them. It sounds like he opened up something and wanted to address it. So I just kind of wanted to reiterate that, or ask Heather what the timeline was for how long he was there before he was really requesting that assistance from the Inspector General's office for the audit.
Okay, thank you.
I guess in just understanding now a little better of the process, I would hope then with the, the superintendent for that district, that area, they're addressing also the treasurer as well. Because I understand they might get stuff after the fact, but then it sounds like there could have been a breakdown there of them not recognizing this was a non-vendor and raising a flag before it got to this point of an inspection, like Leandre pointed out.
Okay.
I just have one question about for the auxiliary team club. Is that supposed to be self-funded? Is it supposed to get any funding from the school? Or is that just a completely separate club that should be self-funded?
Clubs are self-funded.
Okay. So there should have been no transfer of band money
Well,
to that.
the band money was also raised money as well. The money that the district provides stays in our district ERP system. It does not get transferred to the school internal accounts. So any money that's in the school internal accounts for the band program or the auxiliary program is raised through donations, fees from the parents, or fundraisers at the school sites. None of the money from the district goes back into the internal accounts.
Well, I'm trying to get at, if they're raising money for the band, which is officially part of the school,
Correct.
that no money should be transferred to the auxiliary team from even the raising of that money, because it was raised on behalf of the band.
It's a separate club. So the band, if it's being raised for the band, it needs to be in a band account.
Okay.
If it's being raised for the auxiliary team, it's in the auxiliary team account. So we do, within the internal account system, have all of the cash separated into different accounts so that and then there are, at the end of the year, certain clubs and programs that can be consolidated, but it's a very detailed process that's outlined in the Florida Department of Ed Red Book.
Okay.
And I remember, I think the last time we were here, there was things about the safety deposits and the safe and the counting process and the reconciliation. You're only doing that then of the school funds, not of any of this auxiliary or side, or does that happen?
No, that is the school funds. It is part of this. When we're talking about the school funds, it includes all the clubs.
School money.
And it's all the.
So wouldn't we
money
have seen then
collected.
that it wasn't reconciling before it got to this report then? Like, to see like those discrepancies then? Or am I misunderstanding? That's what I was just trying to understand the process. Because I'm saying if it's part of, like, let's say the $4,000 that the band director has that he has to go through you and you guys pay those invoices, and then if he's also dropping in this auxiliary money of $1,000 or whatever, if that's part of the reconciliation process, wouldn't we have seen that sooner?
If the money is going through the band director for both the band and the club, then he most likely deposited the money in the band program. So it wouldn't have looked like it was not reconciled properly because it was said it was for the band program instead of the auxiliary program, just in error. Because on the deposit slip, it will say, that's filled out. It's called the money collected report, MCR report. It will tell you where it should be deposited.
But not like how, like not that it was like 10 students for $150. Like, it doesn't give you the detail behind it.
It wouldn't, I don't think it would be enough detail for the treasurer to say, oh, wait, this was really for the auxiliary team. So there would be support as to, what it was, but I don't think it would have been enough to say, oh, this was wrong.
Kathy?
It's because it states in the report that
Yes,
the funds were commingled. So they must have caught that at some point, seeing that.
Yeah, but I want to clarify that, guys. The auxiliary team is really part of the band. They're not playing instruments, but they're your baton twirlers and the rifle guard, so they're really all part of the band anyway. So 9 times out of 10, when you have a fundraiser, all that's included and it goes to everyone. I don't, Heather, sometimes I've seen it, but for the most part, I've never seen a sub-account that was, say, the auxiliary group. It was all included in whatever the fundraiser. Now, I suppose you could do that. So, but for those people that aren't in the school district, so that you understand it really is a part of the band. And all the big bands in high school, that's all part of it. You don't break out that you get a separate bus for the auxiliary. They all ride on the same bus. They all eat the same food. They all do the same thing. So it's all in one.
See, I view that differently, though, because, like, I was in band, and so I was a freaking music major in college before I switched to accounting. But, like, if you're, like, let's say you use the high school example, if you're in the marching band, that's not a school class. That's like a club. And if you're in the orchestra or the band in a classroom where you're getting a grade, that's part of the band program. So you can fundraise for the marching band, let's say, and that money is separate than if I'm fundraising for the orchestra because we want to help reduce the cost of our orchestra costume, outfits or something.
Right.
So I view those
That's
as
true.
totally different.
Yeah, that's true, but I believe, unless I've read wrong, that this was sort of their marching band. In middle school, it is mixed together, so to speak, because the kids have the class. Usually they use the district money to buy new equipment. But then if they go to perform outside of it, they'll perform, the whole group performs together. So you'll have the kids, the people that are doing the dancing and the baton twirling all together. But I don't want to get into that part of it. I just don't want it to be so that we're looking at stuff so in a sort of a detailed way that it can be all part of the same organization, so to speak. That was my point.
Susie?
I was just going to follow up with Ms. Weigel, and what she's talking about is completely correct in a high school situation, which is why I said at the beginning of the report, this is a middle school, and middle school is strictly a curriculum class, and the auxiliary club is a club. And so in a middle school setting in which this was, the money should have been accounted for separately, and they had been combined. Yes, they do perform together, but one is an after-school club, one is a class.
Okay, got it.
Heather,
Thanks.
I just wanted to confirm the band director has been given additional training to address these items?
I don't know if he's received the additional training yet, but I know that we're requiring that he perform the training this year. And then in addition to that, we took it a step further after the feedback from the committee that I reached out to the instructional superintendent, Dr. Lee, who is going to work with the principal, where they're going to have a sit-down with the band director to reinforce the importance of following district procedures.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I support the report. I just have one question I need some clarity on. If you could go with me to page 3 of this report, in the actual, in letter C, uniform fee refunded to students. I'm not sure if there's I have a misunderstanding. On August 15, 2022, at a band parents meeting, the band director requested payment of band fees of $150 from each student. The stated uses of band fees was $75 for a sweatsuit uniform and $75 to cover band operation supplies, travel incentives, and the food. Here's where I have a misunderstanding. The uniform fee was not used to pay for field trip expenses?
That had been the principal's concern. He specifically said, I think the uniform money was used to pay for field trips, was what he expressed to me upon our entrance. And specifically, the uniform money that was collected was not used to pay for any travel expense.
That the uniform fee, so this is instead the $75 uniform fee was refunded
Correct.
to students?
Back to the parents. There was very few that were collected to start with.
Okay, what was the other 75?
That was left in the band account to be used for transportation, food incentives, whatever other program expenditures.
Okay. I'm saying okay because I understand what you're saying. I just don't understand the $75 that the school retained and what they gave back, because it reads band operations supplies travel. Travel includes your field trips. But $75 was given back for the uniform fee.
He originally asked for 150, and he said, we're going to split this up. 75 is going towards the uniform, 75 for operations.
Okay.
All right. Then down the road, a few weeks later, having to do with the purchasing situation of not being able to use the vendor he wanted, he said, let's just refund back anybody that paid for the uniform already.
Okay. I guess not to wordsmith it to death, but I think somewhere it should be in there where the principal made the statement that it was not used to pay for field trip expenses.
Well, the principal, that was why we looked at it, was because principal on the prior page on the principal's concerns, on letter 1C, his concern was that used funds collected for student uniforms to pay for field trip expense. That was one of his specific concerns.
We can add that clarification to the report.
Okay, I see it now. I didn't go.
Okay.
I read in pieces.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve the report.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0, not 6-0, because Tammy left the meeting. We'll go on then to RSM fiscal year 2023 overview, Chantel and Brent. Oh,
All right,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
Let me back up just for 1 second. You've got an FYI of the internal funds audit. There's nothing to discuss on that, it's just an FYI. So, okay, now.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. If you go back to section 7, we'll start on page 4 of the document. Just to start out, this is our overview of our strategy for the audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. And we're going to take an unbiased, risk-based approach in designing the audit procedures. Nature, timing, extent of procedures will be consistent with our risk assessments and the approach. To start out, we did our initial planning and interim work end of May into early June, and we are scheduled to come back for final field work end of this month, running till about the middle of November. Key areas of focus will be highlighted in a few minutes by Chantel. One thing we want to point out here as well is that last year the district had the joy of implementing GASB 87, which was leases. This year they get the joy of doing GASB 96, which is for subscription-based information technology arrangements. The treatment is the same, but what we're seeing so far everywhere is that people have a lot more of these with the use of the cloud, discovering that everybody thought leases was going to be a big deal. 96 actually requires more work by your team, so that'll just be extra effort they have to put in. Going to the next page, our engagement team, just want to emphasize that we assign professionals with the right level of experience. All of our team members spend 100% of their time working with local governments. You know, the team, as you see here, is consistent. I'll be leading it. Really, Chantel to my left is the one that leads everything and gets it done right. But also, we will be working with Warden Company again as our partner in the audit. Going to the next slide on communication, you know, just it's really important for us to let you know, and I think everybody here knows that we're available year-round. We're at each of the meetings if there are ever any questions. But really, two-way communication between the audit committee, the school board, and us is critical to us in letting us know any concerns or any issues you have. You know, we do inquiries of various members, including the chair of the committee. We talk with the inspector general, you know, just to inquire if there are any concerns. Again, our audit is focused on financial and compliance versus the operational and investigations you heard. But we do welcome any comments at any point in time throughout the year. If you have any concerns, to let us know. On the next slide, just want to emphasize again that independence is always paramount, both in fact and appearance. And we make sure we take steps and have a strict process in place to make sure anytime we're providing any assistance, we always maintain independence with government auditing standards. Going on to the next 2 pages there, our overall audit strategy. I won't bore you with the details, but if we can go to materiality. On the next page, just to highlight, we do use the concept of materiality in planning, executing the audit. Just what that means is we do not look at 100% of the transactions and activities, but we do look at both quantitative and qualitative factors to design our procedures and determine what we feel is necessary in order to, again, assess whether or not the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. Moving on to the next page, just want to highlight also that, we are not engaged to issue an opinion on the effectiveness of internal control, but in accordance with auditing standards, we do look at controls as a mechanism over both financial operations, that's our, government auditing standards opinion, and also over compliance, which is part of the single audit. But just being clear, obviously, an audit of internal controls would be a much deeper level, and again, a lot of that is covered, as we heard earlier, with the operational audits by the IG. Next, and important, just want to highlight, we have certain areas of focus and risk material statement, and I'll turn to Chantel just to highlight a few of those.
Thanks, Brett. As Brett mentioned, our audit is based on a risk assessment approach. So as part of that, we go through and we identify what we deem to be a significant risk. And as part of our initial risk assessment procedures, we've identified the district's self-insurance claims liability, the accounting for retirement and other post-employment benefits, fraudulent revenue recognition, and management override of controls as significant risk. So as you can see in the next few slides, we basically listed each of the significant areas of focus that we have that we reviewed during the audit, as well as what the balance was in the previous year's financial statements. We also include what we feel is the risk description, as well as what our plan response and our audit procedures are to address those risks. So I'll just, in the interest of time, I'll just go through some of the more significant areas of focus. So the first one I wanted to touch on was the self-insurance claims liability. As you can see, was $61 million last year. The school board is self-insured for both general liability, employee health, workers' comp, and general and property and casualty insurance. And as part of that, the district hires their own third-party actuary to review and provide their estimate of what that liability should be. As part of our review, we obtain those actuary reports. We have our own internal specialists that we use to review those actuary reports. We also perform a competence assessment of that actuary, and we review whether the data that was sent to the district's actuaries was complete. And our actuaries basically come back and provide us, letting us know whether the assumptions that was utilized by the district's actuary was reasonable and whether they feel that the liability amount that was recorded is correct. Another one I wanted to touch on was revenue. As you can see, the district has nearly $3 billion in revenue, which the significant sources of that revenue is taxes and intergovernmental revenue, which includes a lot of those revenue and state grants that the district receives. Our focus is mainly making sure that that revenue is properly recognized in accordance with GAAP. So we review what those districts' revenue policies are. We select samples to, as well as confirm significant revenue balances and perform cutoff testing just to make sure that that revenue is recorded properly in accordance with GAAP and in the correct period. Another one I'll touch on was, as part of a significant risk, is the accounting for retirement and other employee benefits. The district is, as part of their pension plan, they're part of the Florida retirement system. As you can see, it's a significant $616 million liability balance in the previous year, and other employee benefits is $63 million. So both of those liabilities, the same thing as with self-insurance, the district hires a third party, well, in terms of the retirement system one, that's through the Florida retirement system. So that, so the FRS actually hires that actuary. But for the other employee benefits, the district hires that external actuary to review that liability. And again, we use our internal specialists to review both of those reports, review the completeness of that data, and also check to make sure that the assumptions and models were utilized are appropriate. I guess another one I'll touch on is, I guess, for payroll expenditures, which is the most significant expenditure that the school district has. Most of our testing just surrounds internal control testing, as well as testing the completeness of what the year-end balance is and making sure that there aren't improper payments to employees. We also utilize our IT specialists to help in this area and making sure that the system is configured properly and checking that whatever rates that the employee, whatever was approved by the school board for the employee rate is what is calculating based upon the hours that they've worked. And Brett already touched on the GASB 96 as the new standard that the district is implementing this year. We've already had multiple discussions with finance employees in regards to where they are in the process. We're starting final fieldwork in the next 2 weeks, so this will be a big area of focus for us. I mentioned the IT system, so in addition to payroll, they also review the IT general controls that the district has over PeopleSoft and just making sure that everyone has the proper access to each of the modules that they're supposed to, as well as making sure any change management goes through the proper controls process. Understanding internal audit, as part of our understanding, we make sure we review any, in addition to attending these meetings, we review any of the relevant internal audit reports that were issued during the year to see if there's any findings or anything noted in those reports that we might need to adjust our approach in our testing. We don't place any reliance on internal audit work just because of the nature of their reports versus our financial. The timing of the audit, as we mentioned, we're starting fieldwork maybe in the next 2 weeks. November is a significant part of our testing. We hope to issue the reports by Thanksgiving is what we're aiming for. And then, so either for that meeting right before Thanksgiving or the meeting after, we'll be presenting the financial statements, which also includes our compliance report and any management letter. This is just for informational purposes only, as some resources that are available to you. And then, again, just to make note that I guess the most significant standard that's upcoming is for starting for fiscal year 25 is with compensated absences. And I'll open it up for any questions.
I have a quick question.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. I saw that you said you use RSM Associates and subcontractors. You said the subcontractor is Ward? Is that what you said?
The company's name is Ward and Company.
Are they local or are they?
Yes, they're a local company.
I was just curious because I didn't know if they're international like we use. I know sometimes
Yeah, so
school
that-
districts and stuff have issues with the use of international people or.
Well, that's for the purpose of they're the minority representative. And that was required as part of the RFP.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, any questions of Brett or Chantel? If not, thank you very much. I don't think we need an approval of that, do we? We don't need a vote on that, do we?
You can't approve the audit plan
Okay,
as presented.
well, with that, if there are no further questions, I'll recommend I have a motion to approve this report.
Leandre motions to approve the report.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, are there any other comments or things that need to be addressed? If not, our next meeting is scheduled to be on Friday, October 20th. So thank you all again for your participation and have a good weekend. With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.